Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you all to the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunities hearing today entitled Examining VA's On-the-Job Training and Apprenticeship Program. Before we begin, I want to ask unanimous consent that our colleague, Mr. Kaufman, be allowed to sit up at the dais and ask questions, and he will be here shortly. Hearing no objections, so ordered. Expanding employment and training opportunities for veterans is the core mission of this subcommittee, and today we're here to review what I believe one of the best but unknown and underutilized programs designed to help veterans achieve economic success. By using VA's OJT and apprenticeship program, veterans are able to supplement their incomes with both the living stipend payments from the VA for their post-9/11 GI Bill benefits, as well as the wages from their employer while they are a trainee. And at the end of their training program, they're able to step right into a beneficial career. I don't know many majors or programs at institutions of higher learning that can promise a job at the end of their programs, and that's what makes this program so special. Well, despite the many positives of using this program, very few veterans have used this benefit, which caused the subcommittee and our colleague, Mr. Kaufman, to be concerned that VA has room for improvement in promoting this program at TAP or through their marketing materials for the post-9/11 GI Bill. That's why we asked GAO to conduct their study and issue the report that is the focus of the hearing today. Unfortunately, GAO confirmed what this subcommittee believed and found that for those who find out about these programs, it's very beneficial. However, most veterans don't realize that this type of program even exists and that VA is not doing a sufficient job of educating transitioning veterans on the option of using the OJT and apprenticeship program. So it's troubled to read that the administration of this program seems to be trapped in basically 20th century methods. GAO found that OJT payments are still completed in a paper-based system that's inefficient and burdensome, to quote them, and relies on participating training programs to mail or fax in certification forms that allow veterans to be paid. In fact, GAO's report found that almost half of the employers they interviewed had to resubmit monthly certifications because VA officials had lost them or had not received them. Ladies and gentlemen, it's no wonder that the VA has had a hard time finding businesses that want to participate in this program if they're forced to fax or mail in forms to the VA. I simply don't understand why that in the year 2015 we're still relying on the U.S. Postal Service or a fax machine to submit VA paperwork. So I'm interested in hearing from VA on how they plan to address this issue, join the 21st century. Equally troubling is the finding in this report that the VA does not track any type of outcomes for veterans who use the OJT and apprenticeship program. GAO found VA has not even considered requesting to use state wage records to track performance. Now, I know the VA has done a lot of work to begin tracking performance outcomes of students going to traditional higher education programs, but I think they also need to step up to the plate and begin tracking some of the outcomes of this program to be the most beneficial. This is Basic Government 101, and I think it needs to be addressed pretty quickly. I've said it before, and I will say it again, VA has to figure out what type of sensible metrics will be used, or Congress will make them up for you, and you probably don't want that. And we'd rather you do it. But I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about how we can improve this program that I believe has the potential to help many veterans for generations to come. And with that, I recognize the ranking member, Mr. Takano, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today's hearing will focus on the GAO's report on the VA's on-the-job training and apprenticeship program. In studying this program, GAO found that most veterans who have used their GI benefits to participate in VA's on-the-job training and apprenticeships have had positive experiences as they transition back into civilian life. That is good news. That is the good news here today. The bad news is that there were so few veterans to survey about their experiences. More veterans should be participating in this valuable program. In addition to identifying high satisfaction combined with low participation, the GAO has provided a helpful roadmap that shows how to expand the OJT and apprenticeship program while maintaining the transparency and accountability that this committee demands. In this case, we have what appears to be a very promising avenue for transitioning veterans to find satisfying long-term employment. Our goal today is to consider GAO's recommendations and ensure that VA can articulate its plan to implement these recommendations sooner rather than later. When we look down the road to a future Economic Opportunity Subcommittee hearing on this same topic, I hope VA will be able to report on the program's success based on clear, measurable outcomes that demonstrate the benefit of OJT and apprenticeships for transitioning veterans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Mr. Takano. We're now pleased to have our panel here today, and with us today we have Mr. Andrew Sherrill, Director of Education, Workforce, and Income Security for the U.S. Government Accountability Office, Dr. Joseph Wescott, Legislative Director for the National Association of State Approving Agencies, General Robert Worley, Director of VA's Education Service, and Mr. Eric Seleznow, Deputy Assistant Secretary for DOL's Employment and Training Administration. I thank you all for being here today. Your complete written statements will be made part of the hearing record, and both of you will be recognized for 5 minutes for your oral statement. So let's begin with Mr. Sherrill. You're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Wenstrup, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the findings from the report we issued last week on the Department of Veterans Affairs post-9/11 GI Bill on the job training and apprenticeship programs. Post-9/11 GI Bill benefits were initially available only for higher education, which may not be the best path for every veteran. But in 2011, provisions were enacted that expanded benefits to cover OJT and apprenticeships. For those who may not be interested in higher education, OJT and apprenticeships offer an opportunity to work full-time while training. In addition to the wages they earn from their employer as a trainee or apprentice, veterans receive a tax-free monthly housing payment from VA. For our report, we analyzed VA program data and surveyed state officials in all 44 states responsible for overseeing these programs. We conducted non-generalizable surveys to collect information from veterans, as well as employers and apprenticeship sponsors who participated in these programs. We also analyzed information about these programs on the VA and Department of Labor websites and in their outreach materials. In summary, veterans we surveyed said the post-9/11 OJT and apprenticeship programs have helped them transition to civilian life, but program data show relatively few veterans have participated. Over 2/3 of the veterans we surveyed specifically noted that receiving supplemental income helped them cover living expenses while transitioning to civilian life. About half of the veterans responding to the survey reported that the programs allowed them to use their GI Bill benefits even though college was not a good fit for them. We also found that the OJT and apprenticeship programs that became available in 2011. Since then, about 27,000 or 2% of the 1.2 million veterans who received GI Bill benefits have participated in these programs. Our report identified 3 areas in which the programs could be improved. First, we found that a key challenge is lack of awareness of these programs. For example, state approving agencies in 39 of the states that administer the programs reported that veterans and employers' lack of awareness of these programs is a primary challenge. VA provides information about the OJT and apprenticeship programs through mandatory transition assistance program briefings for transitioning service members. However, these briefings generally emphasize higher education. For example, out of the 77 total pages in the TAP Facilitator Guide and briefing slides for the mandatory VA benefits 1 and 2 courses, there's only 1 reference to the OJT and apprenticeship programs. In discussing post-9/11 GI Bill benefits, the briefing slides generally refer to education, tuition, school, and student, and do not refer to employers, OJT, or apprenticeship opportunities. Similarly, we found the information provided on VA's post-9/11 GI Bill webpage and on its OJT and apprenticeship web pages, it lacks enough detail for users to reasonably understand how to use their GI Bill benefits for these programs. We recommended that VA identify and implement appropriate cost-effective actions to increase awareness of OJT and apprenticeship benefits. VA agreed and said it will develop a guide for employers and apprenticeship sponsors about these programs. A second area for improvement we identified is the administrative burdens associated with processing monthly benefit payments. Over half of state officials we surveyed cited challenges related to VA's current paper-based payment processing system, which requires employers to fax or mail monthly forms to VA in order for a veteran to receive benefits. In addition, 11 of the 15 employers and apprenticeship sponsors we interviewed said the process is burdensome or inefficient, and 7 said they often had to resubmit monthly certification multiple times because VA officials said they had not received them. VA is now developing a new data system called VA Certs to address these issues, but VA officials said the system may not be implemented until 2017 at the earliest. So in the interim, administrative challenges could hinder program participation, and we recommended that VA identify and implement cost-effective steps to ease administrative challenges as it's developing this VA Cert system. VA agreed and said it would develop a plan to ease these challenges. A third area in which the program could be improved is measuring program performance. We found that little is known about the performance of VA's OJT and apprenticeship programs because VA does not measure program outcomes, such as whether participants retained employment after completing the program. Without such measures, VA is limited in its ability to assess its programs, and veterans may not be well positioned to determine which GI Bill benefits are most suitable for them. We recommended that VA establish measures to report on program outcomes for these programs, including considering relevant data sources and seeking legislative authority to gain access to data if necessary. VA agreed with this recommendation and said it will develop a plan to determine the feasibility of collecting and publishing program outcome data for these programs. That concludes my statement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, thank you, Mr. Sherrill, for your constructive remarks. Dr. Wescott, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Chairman Winstrup, Ranking Member Takano, and members of the Subcommittee on Economic Opportunity, I am pleased to appear before you today on behalf of the over 55 member agencies of the National Association of State Approving Agencies and appreciate the opportunity to provide comments on examining VA's on-the-job training and apprenticeship program. I am accompanied today by Mr. Dan Wellman, the NASA President. Mr. Chairman, we agree with the GAO that there are three main areas surrounding the OJT and apprenticeship program that need improvement. They are outreach, administrative challenges, and outcome measures. We strongly agree that outreach efforts need to be improved, and we believe that state-approving agencies can be a major part of the solution. SAAs are already a part of the process in that we approve and oversee all non-federal OJT and apprenticeship programs. With adequate funding or an adjustment in our contractual requirements, we can provide a more robust outreach to potential employers of veterans and their dependents. For example, from fiscal year 2008 until fiscal year 2011, SAAs increased the number of improved apprenticeship and OJT facilities with at least one active veteran or eligible dependent from 4,471 to 5,285. However, due to our contractual focus on oversight and our constrained funding, the number of approved active facilities in fiscal year 2015 has fallen to only 3,551. Even in this constrained environment, SAAs have been creative and innovative in attempting to reach employers and veterans with the message that there is another path to employment for them, in addition to college. For example, the Missouri SAA under Director Chad Schatz produces a CD aptly titled The GI Bill, It's Not Just for College. This 8-minute CD reflects the perspective of the veteran, the employer, the VA, and the SAA, and it is used by many National Guard units, employers, and SAs across the nation. Mr. Chairman, we recommend that VA conduct national outreach efforts concerning these programs, while the SAA should remain focused on state and local outreach. We would encourage the VA to place more emphasis on their website regarding apprenticeship and OJT opportunities. Likewise, we would suggest outreach efforts by the VA and SAAs should focus on all current chapters of the GI Bill. We would also like to be able to conduct annual supervisory visits to apprenticeship OJT programs. During these visits, we are able to discuss the approval and administration of the program with the certifying officials, and we can provide assistance to veterans enrolled in these programs. Ultimately, supervisory visits strengthen outreach activities in the field. Additionally, current law limits the abilities of SAAs to be reimbursed under their contract for outreach efforts. NASA recommends 38 U.S.C. 3674 be modified to add an additional category of reimbursement for outreach and marketing. NASA has long sought the automation of the apprenticeship OJT process and claims processing. We strongly concur with the concerns raised in the GAO report regarding the need to ease administrative challenges. Automation would provide VA and SAAs with the ability to accurately track the number of active apprenticeship OJT programs and how many veterans are actually enrolled in the program. NASA recommends that until the VA is able to establish an electronic system for apprenticeship OJT payments, the VA should consider reducing administrative burden on employers with approved programs by allowing them to certify all veterans enrolled in the program on one enrollment form. NASA also stands ready to implement a jointly administered pilot project in one of our larger apprenticeship OJT states to test this suggested change in policy. Nonetheless, a reliable and valid automation system remains critical to the eventual improvement of this program. While we understand the challenges the VA faces in developing outcome measures for this program, we concur with the GA on the need for these measures. We would strongly recommend that the VA partner with us in the development of these measures. Mr. Chairman, the OJT and apprenticeship programs provide a tremendous opportunity to put our nation's veterans back to work immediately in meaningful and rewarding careers that are needed in our economy. We applaud the efforts of this committee, our VA partners and stakeholders, and the GAO to improve the administration of the VA apprenticeship OJT program. I thank you again for this opportunity, and I look forward to answering any questions that you and the committee may have.
Well, thank you, Dr. Wescott. General Worley, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Takano, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs education benefit programs. My testimony will focus on VA's administration of on-the-job training and apprenticeship programs under the post-9/11 GI Bill. Public Law 111-377, which was signed into law on January 4th of 2011, amended the post-9/11 GI Bill by expanding eligibility for certain individuals, modifying the amounts of assistance available, and increasing the types of approved programs, which included OJT and apprenticeships. Both OJT and apprenticeship programs are available to veterans using their VA education benefits under the post-9/11 GI Bill. These programs allow veterans to learn a trade or skill through training on the job instead of attending formal classroom instruction at an institution of higher learning or at a vocational school. Eligible veterans pursuing training under the post-9/11 GI Bill, OJT, and apprenticeship programs, in addition to their wages, receive a monthly housing allowance which decreases in 6-month increments as wages are increased. Participants also receive $83 per month, up to $83 a month for books and supplies. Of 725,000 new post-9/11 GI Bill beneficiaries added between fiscal year 2012 and fiscal year 2015, approximately 35,000, or about 4.8%, pursued training through OJT or apprenticeship programs. Today, there are over 3,500 active OJT and apprenticeships, and in fiscal year 2015 alone, 22,000 veterans pursued training through these programs. In September of 2014, VA and the Department of Labor sent a joint letter to approximately 10,000 registered apprenticeship sponsors, encouraging them to recruit and hire veterans into their apprenticeship programs. The letter informed them of VA's deemed approved status for any DOL registered apprenticeship program and provided information on the streamlined process to obtain approval through their state approving agencies. VA has conducted 2 targeted online marketing campaigns to promote OJT and apprenticeship programs under the post-9/11 GI Bill. One in 2011, after Public Law 111-377 was enacted, and one in 2013. There is significant information on the GI Bill website, and VA recently has enhanced its Transition Assistance Program curriculum in the Benefits 1 and the Career Technical track regarding OJT and apprenticeship opportunities. The recently released GAO report includes 3 major recommendations: that VA take action to increase awareness of OJT and apprenticeships, that VA take steps to ease the administrative challenges in submitting paperwork or receiving payments, and that VA establish measures to report program outcomes for OJT and apprenticeships. The VA agrees with these recommendations. VA is already taking action to implement them. Specifically, VA has developed a guide for employers and sponsors on VA benefits for OJT and apprenticeship programs. The guide is now available on the GI Bill website and will be available on the eBenefits Employment Center in the near future. Today, the VBA's Office of Economic Opportunity is sending out an email blast to thousands of recipients regarding OJ and apprenticeship opportunities. Also, this morning, the VA posted a note on its Facebook page, again about OJT and apprenticeships. This page has about 1 million followers. We will do this on a more regular basis to keep the awareness going. Additionally, we have established a working group to expeditiously explore cost-effective options to ease the administrative challenges for employers and veterans in submitting the paperwork and receiving payments until the new VA search system is in place. VA also agrees that program performance measures are important and should be developed to report on program outcomes for post-9/11 GI Bill, OJT, and apprenticeship programs. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, over the past 3 years, the VA has actively collaborated with the Department of Education, the Department of Defense, and many others to establish outcome measures for the post-9/11 GI Bill in accordance with Executive Order 13607 and Public Law 112-249. VA has, for the first time, published those veteran-specific outcome measures on the GI Bill website. Those measures are graduation rates, certificate completion, retention, persistence, and transfer out rates. That happened in September of this year. VA, in collaboration with with the Department of Education, is currently exploring collection of post-graduation data related to employment rates and average salary for graduates. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today, and I'm pleased to answer any questions you or the committee may have.
Well, thank you, General. I appreciate it. Mr. Seleznow, you're now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chairman Wenstrup, Ranking Member Takano, and other distinguished members of the subcommittee. I'm pleased to be here today to discuss the Department of Labor's apprenticeship and on-the-job training programs and how they assist veterans excuse me, in transitioning service members. Prior to joining DOL, I worked in the local workforce system for about 20 years in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I worked at the Governor's Workforce Investment Board of the state of Maryland. And through those experiences, I worked directly in our American Job Service Centers, worked with veterans, worked for stakeholders, and understand how that works at the point of service retail level, if you will. And we worked really many opportunities to work with stakeholders and veterans in this opportunity. Today's discussion is particularly appropriate as DOL recently celebrated the first ever National Apprenticeship Week, November 1st through 8th, just a couple of weeks ago. It was a big success. We had all sorts of apprenticeship opportunities for leaders in business, labor, education, and other partners who expressed their support and activities for registered apprenticeship. Under the Workforce Investment Act, Department of Labor program serves over 14 million people. 14 million people complete our programs annually, mostly through our 2,500 American Job Centers across the country. And we serve, of those 14 million people, about 1 million of those are veterans, and about half of those veterans, over half of those veterans, end up getting jobs. American Job Centers are the cornerstone of our unique federal, state, and local partnerships that comprise the public workforce system of not only Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act programs, Workforce Innovation and Opportunity programs, but also an array of local partners, including veteran services. Any American looking for work can walk through the doors of an American Job Center, or visit our website for all the information and help and assistance they need to get started, and that includes veterans. American Job Centers provide a wide range of career and training services for all job seekers, including career counseling, career planning, resume assistance, job placement, education and training, including OJT and apprenticeship, and access to referrals for numerous other services. And American Job Centers offer veterans and eligible military spouses priority of service to all of our DOL-funded programs. American Job Centers also house business services teams that go out and do outreach with employers in the community, a critical part of our job-driven training strategy. And they often typically partner with local veterans employment representatives in that outreach to offer a range of employer services, including outreach and development of new OJT opportunities and registered apprenticeship. These staff help match DOL OJT participants to employers and with employers, and employers can get between 50 and 75% reimbursement on a trainee's wages in order to reimburse some of the extraordinary costs associated with training new staff. DOL has prioritized OJT strategies because we know they work. We've been using them for over 15 years at the local workforce system. It significantly increases the chances of finding work and leads to better retention and higher average wages. As part of our outcome measures, states are required to report using wage records on employment, retention rates, and post-program earnings. In program year 2013, almost 85% of the veterans who participated in our OJT programs were employed in the first quarter after exiting the program. Almost 90% retained those jobs after 6 months, and the 6 months earning average for veterans on OJT was more than $17,000, close to about $35,000 per year. In 2014, approximately 2,200 veteran apprentices completed their apprenticeship in the 25 states managed by DOL. While DOL does not track employment outcomes specifically for veterans and apprenticeship programs in particular, we do aggregate that data, and over 91% of our apprenticeship participants who completed their apprenticeship were employed in the first quarter after exiting program. Just as importantly, a high number of participants, 91%, completed their apprenticeship and remain in those jobs for 6 months. The 6 months average earnings for these participants was roughly $30,000 or $60,000 per year, which is higher than our average participant in apprenticeship programs. One successful veteran is a fellow by the name of Dan Healy. Dan was a Marine. He was a machinist. He went to our website. He ended up at, to get information on these services, he ended up at Sabuing Tool, an engineering company in Michigan, and he was very successful in transferring his military skills to an apprenticeship, gave him and his family opportunities, gave his employer a very good employee for the long term. The President has challenged us to double and diversify the number of apprenticeships, ensuring that more Americans from all backgrounds benefit from this proven training model, and we've increased by 70,000 the number of apprenticeships over the last year and a half. In 2014, we worked closely with the VA to develop a streamlined system for the GI Bill that the General already talked about. We look forward to continued collaboration with them. And finally, the President's fiscal year 2016 budget also proposes to spend $100 million to expand American apprenticeship grants to support the efforts of states, employers, and enhance apprenticeships across the country, and that will certainly benefit the veterans that we serve in our local service system. So thank you for the opportunity to appear before you today. I'd be pleased to respond to any questions.
Well, thank you all very much for your testimony here. I appreciate that. Mr. Seleznow, let me just start with you, because that was a lot of information you packed into 5 minutes, and I appreciate that. And you're getting good data. You know, you're acquiring good data and really being able to estimate the outcomes. And how far out do you go typically? I mean, I know it's hard to track people for the rest of their lives, but, you know, to find out, are you still employed 5 years later or 3 years later? How far are you able to go?
Yeah, typically, I mean, our first is 6 months after completion of a program. So we may be working with somebody for 6 months, we may be working with them a year. Through an apprenticeship program, it could be 2, 3, or 4 years. So 6 months after completion of the program is the first check, and we can also do it, you know, at 4 quarters after exit as well. We usually do it the second quarter after exit, and we do it at the fourth quarter after exit.
But usually not beyond a year. No.
Not beyond a year in most cases, except for research and evaluation purposes, which we have a robust chief evaluation office where we're looking at a lot of these programs, so it is possible to look farther beyond that.
Yeah, so if you can get it at 6 months, would it be pretty easy to get it at a year or 2 years?
At a year, yes. Any more than that, I wouldn't be the expert in the data collection strategies. We could get that for you, whether we have the possibility to do that. I'm sure we have some capacity.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the methodology allowed for that, because that's good information. You know, obviously 6 months is nice, but, you know, we'd love to know where you are 5 years from now.
Sure.
You know, that type of thing. You know, as far as getting people aware of the program, I get the challenge. I mean, TAP is an overload, right? And so how do you get in the process anywhere where somebody will say, oh, how could you miss the OJT component of what there is to offer? And that's a challenge. And so I want to ask you about that. You know, we heard some ideas, Facebook and this and that, but how can we really get more people involved, considering that there's a lot of information being put out to veterans as they come out? So how can you find yourself standing out, if anybody wants to take that question?
I'll start, Mr. Chairman. I think it takes a breadth of avenues to do that. I mean, it starts with the information we send to service members in the period before they actually transition. Then it goes into TAP, where, as I mentioned, there have been enhancements in the Benefits 1 briefing. But again, it's not like there's 20 pages dedicated to OJT and Benefits 1, because so much is required to be put into that briefing. The career technical track has also been enhanced. There are several, much more discussion about apprenticeships and OJT in the career technical training. Of course, that's an optional track that a veteran needs to choose to do, but it is being used quite significantly. And then it becomes a matter of all the other things that we try to put out there with respect to the breadth of opportunities, the incredible breadth of opportunities that the GI Bill provides, from institutions of higher learning all the way to the vocational schools, to OJT, apprenticeship, correspondence, flight, all those avenues, to give them their just due, if you will, with respect to the representation of them on our websites.
Just for a second, let me ask you, do we require any kind of a survey after TAP or at the end of TAP? You know, where maybe we ask some questions. Do you feel you understand this? Do you feel you know where to look for this information?
I'm not the expert on the the checkup of TAP, but I will tell you that the DOD and VA, as you know, have been working significantly on TAP for many years, and part of the discussion that I've been part of as well to some degree is exactly what you're talking about, measuring the effectiveness of TAP overall with respect to, in my case, the education piece. Do people who go to TAP, for example, choose the education option or go one way or another? And these are measures that are not in place yet, that require a significant amount of data sharing and interface between DOD and VA. But those discussions are going on, and we're making progress, but it'll be some time, I believe, before we'll have those kind of measures in place.
Well, maybe a simple survey after people complete TAP to really see how much they picked up. You know, it's not a pass-fail. No one can fail, but you get information from that.
Yes, sir.
Going to the costs and modernization and things like that, I mean, it doesn't cost more to do email. It doesn't cost more to go online. It costs more to snail mail things. It costs more to fax things, and it delays things. I did appreciate when you talked about having one enrollment form. You know, we got to look at what we can do to make it easier for people to want to participate, and that's come out today, and I hope that we continue to pursue that. But I'm not necessarily buying that we need more funding for this to simplify the process. Actually, simplifying it should reduce costs. And I really want to see us going in that direction. I don't think there's any reason why we can't. I mean, every one of us does far less snail mail in our life because we can go online and do these things that cost us nothing. It saves us the stamp, it saves us the paper. We can do that on a larger scale, and we need to do that. But I do see great potential here, and I want to keep pushing in this direction and follow up with you again to see where we are. I commend you for the report that you gave us, because it's very, very constructive information on how we can move forward and do a better job for our veterans, which of course is our goal. And with that, I yield back. Mr. Takano, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, one of the VA programs that's really impressed me the most recently, and I think also our chairman, is the Vet Success on Campus, or VSOC program, where students have access to those counselors. Do veterans choose to use their GI benefits to pursue OJT or apprenticeships rather than attending college, have access to similar guidance by a counselor or mentor, and access to a similar community that they might have, say, on a campus vet center? So, I mean, we know that in a campus setting that they have there are VSOCs available. Is there a similar sort of support system for veterans who seek the OJT track?
Not specifically, Congressman Takano. Obviously, the Vet Success on Campus office and those counselors are there to serve the folks that are in the academic programs there. There isn't a corollary focused counselor per se just for OJT and apprenticeship.
All right, thank you. Dr. Wescott, the state approving agencies, can you tell me just how much the state of California participates, or any other panelists who would know how much California participates in this program?
Yeah, I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I apologize.
I want to know, I know that one of the areas that we're facing a challenge is in replenishing the number of our building tradesmen, our building trades, right? And I know that the building trades unions invest a lot of their own resources into training centers. I've personally toured a carpenter's training facility not far from my district.
Right.
To what extent do the trades participate in these sort of programs for the veterans, the OJT?
Well, there is a great deal of participation, you know, carpeting, plumbing, electricians, programs are set up for all of those. And that's one area where we're anxious to be more involved, is in outreaching to those, you know, those unions and outreaching to those individuals who are participating in that. I mentioned the Missouri CD that is shared, but also like in our state of Illinois, which has, in that state, they have 336 approved and active apprenticeship OJT facilities. They've got a vigorous outreach program where if they're out visiting with an employer that is training electricians, then and there's another employer close by, we might go and visit with that particular employer and tell them about the program and the opportunity that veterans who are employed there might have to be engaged in it. You know, we're working, Ohio is providing briefings to the Ohio State Apprenticeship Annual Conference and sits on as an advisor on their State Apprenticeship Council. So there are these opportunities to provide outreach. We want to do more to the very sorts of people and careers you mentioned.
So for instance, the kind of centers I'm talking about, the trainings like the Carpenters Training Center,
Right.
it's run by the Carpenters Union. We see, you'd like to see more participation.
Exactly.
How can we do that? How can there, what are the steps or what are the things in the way to get that participation?
Well, I would think certainly one of the things that we would like to do is to have the opportunity to actually send a program specialist or consultant out to that center and meet with those directors and talk about the opportunities that veterans could have. Because one of the sad things that occurs and has occurred in recent years is if veterans just aren't aware, especially in those type of settings. You know, one of the things that NASA has done is we've even become engaged with the certain certifying official associations so that even school officials could become aware of the fact that we have this other path to a job in the GI Bill, another opportunity for veterans beyond the education setting.
Any other comments?
So, you know, in our Office of Apprenticeship, our National Apprenticeship Program, we work with the building trades, and we're trying to diversify into other fields, IT, cybersecurity, healthcare, and really expand apprenticeship. You know, there's helmet to hard hats programs, wounded warrior programs, vets and piping programs. They're all some of our national partners who very much, like to work with.
Well, the Helmets Are Hardest program, for example, I mean, does that interface at all with this veterans program at all? Is there any interface? Is there any way that they work together, the helmets, the hard hats?
I don't know.
No?
I don't know about their particular programs. We meet with them, we're briefed with them, we do work with them, either our Veterans Employment Training Office or on the local or state level on apprenticeship or reaching out to employers.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Kaufman, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sherrill, just one question. It seems, I know in my state of Colorado that it's very difficult for, first of all, the awareness among veterans leaving active duty is almost zero about this program. And then when employers do need veterans, such as somebody who was a Humvee mechanic into an auto mechanic in a service department, it's just so difficult to navigate this program. It would seem to me that you've got the Department of Labor and you've got Dr. Wescott's group, that one of them should be contracted with in terms of the implementation of this and probably even the reimbursement. Can you comment on that?
Well, I mean, just to echo, I mean, the state approving agencies do, for the most part, handle sort of the outreach for the program at the state level. VA does do some of the outreach at the federal level, but when, here's a quote from a veteran that participated in one of these programs. "This is a hidden program that should be more prominent in availability. I would not have known I could use the OJT program if not for word of mouth from another employee." And we found a lot of veterans saying word of mouth is how they heard about it. Now, in terms of some of the things that veterans told us might help would be learning about the programs during recruitment as a possibility. Some of the veterans said that having more concrete examples, not just knowing a program exists, OJT and apprenticeship, but concrete examples of how veterans have used the program, highlighting those kinds of things.
I went through the Vietnam era GI Bill, served one enlistment in the United States Army, and what I know or remember in comparison to the veterans now is we were a younger population, less likely to have families. I think the veterans coming out today are older, better educated, more likely to have families, more likely to want to go to work directly into employment, and in my view, utilize one of these programs, and the numbers ought to be much higher than they currently are. Dr. Wescott, can you comment on what role, an enhanced role, I think that your organization might be able to play to expand this this opportunity in terms of maybe a contractual relationship with the VA, a stronger one?
Certainly, Mr. Compton, and welcome the opportunity to do so. First off, you know, we need funding for outreach. We need a line in our contract that allows us to actually perform some of these marketing functions at the local area. We want to reach out to veterans. We want to do it by way of bulletins, by, again, connecting on a more regular basis with the other agencies that serve this population, making additional steps or stops, out-of-stops we call them, so that we can actually talk to folks who might be interested in this program. I agree that we're missing an opportunity with a more mature population coming out today who may already have degrees and are now looking for a job opportunity, and this is a great program to connect them with that.
Now, Mr. Seleznow, I wonder if you can comment on, could you see a greater role for the Department of Labor in terms of doing this?
Yeah, I'll give you one observation just about TAP, for example, because I used to work with veterans through our American Job Center with TAP. They have a lot on their minds when they're transitioning through, and so that may be mentioned, and they're not always, you know, remembering that because there's just so many things as they transition back to their community. So I think what we can do to help is continue to reinforce that in our American Job Centers through our DVOP outreach people and all of our workforce staff to help increase that outreach and participation. You know, our website is pretty robust when it comes to veterans. You can sort of get to a lot of different places when you get to our Vets Apprenticeship One-Stop, so we do a lot of marketing and outreach with that. And also, I'm just reminded that our U.S. Military Apprenticeship Program, we also serve 95,000 military apprentices today, who, when they do transition out of the military, we can work with them getting reconnected in their communities.
So what funding source do you, so you don't tap into the post 9/11 GI Bill, though, when you do that? That's a separate program, am I correct?
That would be separate for whether in the military, but certainly when they get out, you know, we've really enjoyed that connection with VA to make that GI Bill. I think our employers like it. I think our apprentices like it. I think it's a great connection.
Okay. General Wescott, how long have you been in this position? I'm sorry, not Wescott, I'm sorry. General Worley, ouch. How long have you been in this position?
I've been in this position since April of 2012, sir.
April of 2012. So tell me about why you've not moved to electronic communications at this point.
I guess to go back a little bit historically, it's symptomatic, I would say, sir, of the individual stovepipe technology systems that we have that we're operating today. As you know, Public Law 111-377 is where the post 9/11 GI Bill began to be able to do OJT and apprenticeships, which, starting in October of 2011. At that time, we were in the middle of the development of the long-term solution, and we had to, because of that law and be able to implement it, there was a significant re-vector of the development, but all of that had to do with the processing of claims. A OJT and apprenticeship claim, once it's put into the system, is processed by the long-term solution that was developed through over the last 3 or 4 years. But the upfront piece is a completely different system in schools called VA Once, the system by which schools submit their enrollment.
Well, it's just, you know, it's unacceptable. I think you'd agree that it's unacceptable.
Yes, sir.
And the fact that the employers have to kind of reapply through the process, and it's burdensome. And it is amazing to me how somebody can come from the private sector into the VA like Secretary McDonald or yourself from the United States Air Force as a leader in the Air Force, and all of a sudden fit right into this culture. Because if this were a report, that came down on your organization in the United States Air Force, you'd be relieved. But yet, it's all acceptable here. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McNerney, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, I thank the chairman. General Worley, would a partnership between the VA and the VSOs or the Department of Labor, would that benefit the outreach program and the spread of information on the OJTs?
Yes, Congressman, I think stronger partnerships would. We have partnerships with the Department of Labor and very strong partnerships with the VSOs and with our state approving agencies. More focus on outreach with respect to OJT and apprenticeship programs is an opportunity that's there, and we will pursue that in the future.
Do you see a pathway to improve those partnerships?
Yes, sir.
Could you
I
explain
do.
it?
Well, I mean, just the testimony that my partner here from the Department of Labor has given will, provides opportunities that we can talk about with respect to outcome measure databases, how we measure things, and outreach through their American Job Centers.
Well, you said that the VA is considering gathering post-grad data. It's not doing that now?
The focus in implementing the executive order and Public Law 112-249 has been to focus on the institutions of higher learning and vocational schools. So the outcome measures that we have for the first time published back in September have to do with two-year schools, four-year schools, and vocational schools. So we believe that these outcome measures are important for OJT and apprenticeships. We don't measure post-graduation information yet, but we're exploring those avenues with the Department of Education, and we will pursue those with the Department of Labor.
Is there enough data? Is there enough post-grad data to be significant, or is it mostly just ad hoc at this point?
With respect to employment or salaries or what?
Outcomes of the...
We have data, we have completion data on those going to school. We would need to develop ways to collect that information with respect to OJT and apprenticeship completion and then post-completion success in their employment.
Dr. Wescott, you mentioned that you'd need funding to do additional outreach. Are there private sources? I mean, you're going to be helping employers potentially, right, by training folks. Is there private money that would be useful or available or accessible somehow?
Well, Congressman, I'm not sure about that, but certainly we would love to have the time and opportunity to seek some of that out. We do work closely with our universities and colleges, et cetera, in our states when we're talking about approving programs. Certainly, being given the time and the opportunity to work more with employers, we might be able to make some connections whereby we could look at some type of state government connection between us and employers. The other thing that we would, of course, look for the opportunity to do is to work with the state Veterans Affairs agencies in our states in these areas as well. But as far as awareness of any funding at the present time, I'm not.
So you need money to find out if there's money.
Well, we would not so much the need of money, but if we could spend a little more time in the apprenticeship OJT world, we might could increase our marketing.
Okay, Mr. Seleznow, you mentioned that the Workforce Development Act. Are there provisions in there for GIs or for veterans specifically?
Yeah, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act that was signed last July, calls out, makes eligible veterans, military spouses, certain eligible military spouses. It calls out apprenticeship programs. It talks about OJT. So all of these things are within our authorized activities under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act.
So are you able to follow through with those requirements?
Yeah, I mean, our system is a state and federal partnership, local partnership. So you have the local workforce boards and the American Job Centers that are providing these services at the local level. There's our local veterans employment representatives and disabled veteran outreach workers in those, working hand in hand with our state staff and local staff. And, you know, it's sort of a customized program when people walk in the door. Not everybody needs an apprenticeship or an OJT program, right? We do some classification, some sorting, and referring people to the appropriate treatment, the appropriate tool, or the appropriate effort, especially for veterans that walk in those centers.
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Costello, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you tell us why there was a short CD that was once promoted in the OJT and apprenticeship program, and my understanding is that's no longer being handed out in TAP classes? Is that correct? And if it is, could you share why that is? Undergirding that question is the concern that there might be so much contained in the TAP classes that part of the reason why people aren't aware is because of just how much is consumed or absorbed in the TAP class. There's probably like 3 or 4 questions in that one question.
I don't think the timing of the video was such that, I think that was pre-TAP, if I would defer to state-approved agencies, but if it was developed after TAP, then I'll have to take that for the record, Congressman. I don't know the reason why we may or may not have distributed that video.
I think I can speak some to that, Congressman. Certainly, prior to the new Transition Assistance Program being developed, state-approving agencies were more involved in the actual TAP briefings. And so there was that opportunity for us to share some of the promotional materials that we had. When that was restructured, at the present time, I'm not aware of any state-approving agencies that are involved in the TAP briefings. That's all completely run by the, I assume, DOD and VA, or the federal partners. So I assume that's when this occurred, was when we no longer had the opportunity to be involved in those briefings, then we were no longer able to share that CD such as the one I mentioned.
Thank you. I yield back.
Ms. Rice, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Worley, I just want to continue along the lines of my colleague, Mr. Kaufman, because I think he makes a really excellent point. You know, there have been people from the private sector who have been very successful in other endeavors being brought to the VA to see if they can kind of change the inept culture. And I don't think that's too descriptive a word. I think it's pretty accurate. So what is it about, just to continue along the lines of Mr. Kaufman's question, what wall did you hit in terms of being able to implement that system?
Congresswoman Rice, I would challenge the description of inept culture with respect, at least to the education side of what we do. When I started the job in 2012, in September 2012, our pending log without full automation was over 200,000. By the time we implemented the full automation of long-term solution, today our average pending workload is in the 30,000 range as we speak today. Timeliness has gone from a month for an original claim to 11 or 12 days. For a supplemental claim, timeliness has gone from 18 or 19 days to 6. There has been huge advancement with respect to automation and processing of claims. What we're talking about is one specific program, OJT and Apprenticeship, which does not have the entry technology capability for submitting the information electronically today. The form can be accessed online and filled out online. The law requires that there be 2 certifications on that form certifying the hours that the employee worked. That's the employee's signature and the employer's signature. So that sets up, and there's PII in this certification. So you have a situation where you have to have the proper security set up to do this electronically. That will happen when we have VA certs implemented in 2017. But until that time, it's a paper process, sent in and faxed. Can we do that by email? Yes, ma'am, we can. And we're going to pursue both that option and other ways to relieve some of the administrative burden going on with respect to this program in the meantime. But when we get to the VA search, which is an upgraded system that we have on contract under development today, that should be completed by early 2017. We will have a full electronic way of submitting the hours, and we won't have this paper process anymore.
Mr. Sherrill, is there any aspect of your report that looked into DOL, or was it just VA-based?
Our report did include looking at Department of Labor with regard to the element of measuring performance, because since we didn't have any data from VA on the OJT and apprenticeship programs in terms of what do we know about how well they're performing in terms of outcomes, we did look at Department of Labor data. And while the programs have some differences, Department of Labor's OJT and apprenticeship, we did find that these models have shown the ability to demonstrate positive outcomes. For example, just to give you a few quick examples, for Department of Labor OJT, and the Department of Labor tracks this for veterans. So for post 9/11 era veterans who received OJT, 85% of them entered employment within 3 months of completing their on-the-job training. And 86% of those retained employment over the next 6 months. This is a snapshot in time. Obviously, it's not necessarily representative of VA and its programs, but it does show the potential for these programs, because we're really talking about job-driven training programs for both on-the-job training and apprenticeship, really tying in to meet in-demand occupations, having certifications, the industry-recognized credentials that are really tied into what employers need. So there's a heavy promise here for these models of job training here. So that's why we think it's especially important, since veterans under the GI Bill have choices to make about which options are best for them. Having outcome data would really help inform veterans about what might be the best fit for them.
I couldn't agree more. Mr. Seleznow, is that how you say your name? So recently, I had the pleasure of hosting Secretary Perez out in my district, and I thank the Secretary and really your entire department for your passionate support of on-the-job training. We were actually looking at an apprenticeship program at a specific project in my district. So the fact that there are distinctions at all between DOL and VA as it relates to on-the-job training and apprenticeship programs, how can that be? And how do you coordinate better with the VA so that the quality of the services that are rendered by both federal agencies are equivalent?
So we've been doing both apprenticeship and OJT and a range of other workforce programs for a very long time. Our apprenticeship program since 1937 we've been doing, and we're trying to transform it in the last 2 years into the next 20, which is a big jump right now. And so apprenticeship is getting a lot of action across the country, a lot of attention as a result of Secretary Perez's advocacy on that. As you know, our OJT program we've done for 20, 25 years. It goes back to JTPA. Local areas do it. We do it by contract. We have a system across the country that's been trained in it for many years. We operate it differently than yours. We have probably a lot different capacity to do that through our American Job Center one-stop system. But we have a cadre of people across the country who know how to do those at the local level. They're approved at the local level. Sometimes they're approved at the state level, but it's done quickly and efficiently at that level, and it goes into our robust data system. So, we've just been doing it a lot longer. Happy to collaborate with the general and his folks about how to strengthen some of the things they do. We operate our programs are a little bit different, but I think there's a great example of collaboration that we did with the GI Bill and apprenticeship program. Our outreach on that, I think will yield great results and great benefits for the veterans who participate in that.
Well, I think that should be a high priority so we can ensure that whatever program a veteran is accessing is one that's going to help them and that there are measurable outcomes for that. Thank you all very much. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I think that when it comes to the marketing side of things, as far as with our troops, part of marketing is to get someone's attention, and there's no better way, and I think, General, you agree, of having someone's attention when they're in uniform and mandated to do something. And so that would be the area where I think we focus on our troops and not afterwards. As far as employers, that's a different story, and we can discuss that further at some time. But I do also want to recommend that if you find stumbling blocks that require some legislative proposals that need to be changed, then they need to be brought to our attention so we can work with you in trying to make things better. But if there's no further questions, you're all excused, but I do want to thank you all for being here today. I think it was a constructive conversation. We all got some homework to do. And I look forward to getting back with you at another time. It's clear that this is an invaluable program for our veterans. It's something that guarantees them a job at the end of their training. I hope VA addresses GAO's recommendations and makes an honest effort to market this program to more veterans as they transition out of the military. I hope they strive to put an emphasis on tracking outcomes. That's, I think, very important for future participants, as they recently have for other education programs. So with that, I ask all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include any extraneous material in the record of today's hearing. Hearing no objection, so ordered. If there's nothing further, this hearing is adjourned.